Welcome back. Let's talk about people. So we've defined an intelligent system as a system with the ability to make choices with respect to a reward function. I could redraw the same picture like this, where I've got the intelligent system is this choice bit, and then it's got inputs coming in and rewards going into that, and then it produces outputs. It makes choices. Now this is fundamentally what the interesting part of the brain does. Your brain has the reward function defined inside of it. You take in inputs from your senses, and then you produce muscle actions. So I could describe, the sensors and muscle control as my inputs and outputs. You can also describe the reward function bit as kind of like your instantaneous happiness. This is what you're trying to optimize for over the space of your entire life. So if you think, if I eat this ice cream, that'll be nice. But if I get fat, that'll be bad, right? You can imagine that the instantaneous happiness now of eating the ice cream, but then the slow and eventual sadness of being fat. And we balance them up against each other. We have to. And this is sort of how the intelligence system works in our brains. So this reward function is this sort of instantaneous happiness. How happy am I right now, right this instant? But that's not a direct translation, because our brains are obviously horrendously complicated. And sometimes we do things which we don't really choose to do. It's complicated. Anyway, so the reward function is kind of that, but it's not exactly that. So I'm just going to keep on using the word reward function for the reward function inside your brain. But it's important to note that you do actually have one. It's something that guides all of your choices all the time, whether or not you're actually aware of it. Your senses also pass into your reward function. You can imagine doing something that makes you experience physical pain, and that would actually make you sad at that moment. So obviously that flows into your reward function. And what choices you make flow in, and your goals flow in. And it's quite complex. Like, for example, if I say I'm going to give you some chocolate cake tomorrow, then you actually will experience some of the happiness of eating chocolate cake right now, because you're in anticipation of receiving the chocolate cake itself. And we do all sorts of clever things like this. It's a very complex process in our brains, but, it's good, and it works very well. And it is the same system. Now, obviously, the rewards inside your brain are subconscious. Remember, because if we could consciously control these rewards, then we would just do this, and we would set them to be infinity all the time. But they're not. They're part of a subconscious, out of our control section of our intelligent brains. And this is kind of interesting. So let's talk a little bit about rewards, and about how these work, or how we've evolved to have them. Now, you can imagine humans, like humanity, like our genes, as this big, long organism that's been living for an awfully long time through the individuals who procreate right through human history. Now, if you think about that as a sort of intelligent system, it kind of all fits a bit. I mean, the reward function going in is what makes the genes survive. So this is survive and reproduce for people and for animals and stuff. And if they don't survive and reproduce, then the punishment is that part or that idea or whatever caused them to not survive and reproduce is killed. And this is sort of how evolution works. Now, the really funny thing is that we have this feeding into our genes, but inside our brains, it's completely different. While outside we want to survive and reproduce, that's what our genes want to do, for the individual, we really want to do this complex Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing, where we have all sorts of bits and pieces that we want to do, and we get partial happiness. We get a bit of happiness from achieving or progressing up this, hierarchy. It's kind of like our chess AI. Instead of just getting 100 points of happiness whenever it wins a game of chess, if instead it got 100 points when it won, but also whenever it took a piece, it kind of got a couple points of happiness. And some positions are better than others, so as soon as when it gets into those positions, then it's going to get a bit of happiness. And it's kind of a shortcut or something. Or it's a way to guide our choices when we're not actually making intelligent ones, or when we're not thinking. And it's a sort of wacky-ass specialization. And it begs the question, should you be trying to survive and reproduce only, or should you do what our brains kind of are programmed in, which is like survive and reproduce if you can, but also stay away from dangerous things because they're scary, and, try and make pretty girls smile even if you're never going to have kids. It's kind of funny. But really, your optimal strategy is, is this Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing. Because remember that you, the intelligent agent, this is you. Your brain defines what makes you have rewards. No external force does that. It's a program inside your head. And if you can satisfy that, then that's ultimately all you, the intelligent system, is ever trying to achieve. So, to sum up, intelligent systems are systems with the ability to make optimizing choices. They receive a reward function input, and they receive inputs from the world, and they try and pick the outputs that are going to get the best reward inputs coming in over the course of their lifetime. And that's what intelligent systems are. So join me next week. Next week I'm going to start to talk about some biases in architecture, why bias is a great thing, and how I actually want to design stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this. Comment on that. Yeah, cool.